Just when you thought you've seen it all, Marvel throws Monkey Scott Summers into the mix. Sherlock Holmes better watch out because Detective Cyclops is coming for his gig. X-Men Ghost Boxes gave us the gift of Detective Cyclops in 2008. Hailing from Earth 889, this Cyclops is part of a pre-digital culture. He is still protecting the Earth from other dimension threats. This time, the threat is extra-dimensional mutants that have targeted Earth for annexation. Cyclops is part of the X Society, and they are basically the X-Men. They are the protectors of the Earth. Overall, the world looks super cool and vintage, and I absolutely would choose to live there. The art style is really cool, the story seems interesting, plus the characters are all detectives. Like, what more could you want? What the X Society is investigating here is the intentional passing of a mutant from possibly another universe. Scott is a pretty major player in the short series. At the start of the second comic, he goes on a big, introspective, slightly emotional, depressing, reflective monologue called The Last Testament of Scott Summers. Is Cyclops really still a Cyclops if you replace every piece of him? Remember that thought experiment they brought up in WandaVision, Theseus' paradox? Well, that was Cyclops the X-Sentinel. Earth 1011 exists in the X-Men Millennial Visions. What business do I have bringing up the Theseus thing though? In the comic, it's like a page-long explanation of what's happening and then a big picture of what they just explained. There is a photo of the main X-Men. The attached essay to that picture claims that as the X-Men got older, it was harder for them to heal from battle wounds, but they still wanted to fight and protect the Earth. So they started replacing the parts of themselves too hurt to carry on. Like, the blur breeds, a lower leg or arm is too damaged, no big deal, we'll just replace it. They even downloaded their consciousness into the cybernetic bodies so they could fight forever. Their signature looks were kept so the public knew who was fighting for them, only of course it went wrong. The cybernetic sentinels started breaking down due to an overload of info in their brains and began focusing on their single goal, saving mutant kind. Any threat to mutant kind, even people, had to be eliminated. Is Cyclops still Cyclops if every piece of him is eventually replaced? I think not, but let me know what you think down below. There was once a Cyclops that worked under the Professor X that became Juggernaut. He existed on Earth 905 from Marvel's What If 13. This universe looked pretty bleak for humans. Professor X turning into the Juggernaut caused this whole chain of horrible reactions that led to the Professor crawling out of the rock, a supreme control peacemaker. Mutants ran everything, and humans spent their lives pretty much just living in fear. The Cyclops in this world is married to Jean with 3 kids, and he is still the kind of guy to stand up for all things right and good. So he realizes that humans shouldn't have to live like this, and leaves the Professor Juggernaut's X-Men. So the powers, morals, and love life are pretty much the same as the Scott we know, but this Scott has a different helmet. Instead of the sleek helmet we are used to, he has a bigger one with these like horn-looking things. The Cyclops and X-Men go up against the Professor Juggernaut X-Men and win. Juggernaut gets literally launched into space. There is a reality where everything is the same, but all mutants are of African American descent, including Cyclops. It's Earth 63 and it's super new. It was dreamed up in 2023's Bishop War College. Lucas Bishop accidentally ended up on Earth 63. He gets transported straight to the front gates of Earth 63's School for Gifted Youngsters and remarks that he had seen it all, but was even shocked by the sight in front of him. Scott Summers and Jean Grey are standing right in front of him, and their outfits are very similar to what they usually wear. They just have Wakandan design influences. As far as I can tell, the only difference between this Cyclops and our Cyclops is their history. Otherwise, it's the same powers and everything like that. Cyclops was once on a Deadpool-led team of X-Men. This version of Cyclops was glimpsed in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe issue 4. When Deadpool is jumping around through the nexus of all realities, we see a bunch of different Deadpool variations. One of them is a Professor X pool. Professor X pool is flanked by Cyclops and Iceman. I don't really want to imagine the implications of combining Professor X and Deadpool, but Cyclops in this universe looks almost exactly the same. The one difference is his super costume is showing a bit more skin. He almost looks like he's wearing a tank top, and I wonder if Deadpool had anything to do with that. There is a Scott Summers out there known as Psych. He comes from the year 2000, originating in the Big Town comics. This world is known as Earth 110. In this universe, Summers presumably has all the same powers. He is still seen wearing his visor. His outfit looks a bit different. It has what looks like a V on the chest and some enormous shoulder pads. Cyc was part of a gang of mutant thugs called the Mutts. They worked out of and controlled Newark, New Jersey. On Earth 616, Professor X and Cyclops are super close. The Professor is like a father to Cyclops. They are a super important relationship in the comics. However, in fact, on Earth 110, they are more likely to scrap with each other. The Mutts often fight with the X Squad. They did fight alongside them once out of necessity when Doctor Doom attacked. After the allyship was over and Doctor Doom was defeated, the Mutts were offered the opportunity to join the super team, the X Squad. However, they refused. There's a Cyclops out there with his eyes positioned vertically instead of horizontally. The first issue of Howard the Duck Volume 6 showed a brief appearance of Cyclops, but he looked a little different. His visor was vertical instead of horizontal. That implies that his eyes were vertical instead of horizontal. We don't know if this is just another mutation that Cyclops has and he's the only one, or if everyone in his world has it. We only see him. In the panel where we see him, this guy opens a wizard portal that shows a bunch of different universes. So we also see an evil Squirrel Girl, a Spider-Gwen Batman, scraggly Captain America, and Duck Iron Man. This Cyclops doesn't have a known universe designation because he's only been seen that one random time. Marvel gave us the gift of an Elizabethan Cyclops. His name is amazing. It is Scotius Summerisle, and he is a witch breed. This takes place in 2003's Marvel 1602. The entire comic takes place in the last bit of the era, and literally everybody is there. I love it when Marvel writers have fun. The backstory for Scotius is that he worked on boats as a kid until his witch breed status was revealed. When that was found out, he wasn't treated very well, but before anything permanent happened, Scotius was found by Carlos Javier to go to his school. Also, Professor Carlos calls the team his mutantor. Iconic. He still met Jean Grey and fell in love with her, but she had to pretend to be a man. It was a whole thing, don't ask. On a mission, Scotius and Roberto, or Iceman, save Angel from the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. In this world, Scotius doesn't really have a visor, it's more just like a pair of cool sunglasses. Overall, I gave them a 10 out of 10, especially Scotius Summerisle. Cyclops looks like a prince already, and he actually was one once. In Uncanny X-Men 153, or Kitty's Fairy Tale, Cyclops plays the noble prince in the story Kitty Concocts. It's a fitting role for the X-Men. He rules over a faraway land and was set to marry none other than the enchanted princess Jean Grey. But then the kingdom was under attack, and Jean allied herself with the primal cosmic forces to save the city, but they made her turn evil, turn into the Dark Phoenix. It started slowly, but eventually the once gentle princess became evil and cursed her friend and fiance. In this world, Jean gave Scott his eyes of death, as they are called there. The prince and wizard Xavier fled the kingdom together, the wizard giving the prince his fancy blindfold. The pair continued to track the evil princess. Their mistake, she attacked them once they found her, or she found them. The other members of the X-Men get picked up along the way. There is a big final battle like all the X-Men comics have, and then Jean Grey's pure soul takes over, returning the evil Dark Phoenix soul to the primal energies of the cosmos. When the Phoenix is gone, Cyclops' eyes return to normal, him and Jean get married finally, and they all lived happily ever after. The Monkeyverse is Earth 8101. It's apparently very similar to Earth 616, aside from all the monkeys. Monkey Cyclops is on the X-Simians. They fought the Beyonder to make this already wild world even wilder. There were vampire invaders at one point, and Monkey Cyclops had to help fight them off. He did so using all the same powers that 616 Cyclops has access to. The Monkeyverse has only shown up a handful of times, mainly in Marvel Apes volumes, which is unsurprising to say the least. I think Monkey Cyclops looks pretty interesting, and I would love to see more of him.
Coming in at number 10 is Ice Master. In the alternate dimension of Earth 13729, an older, like really old version of Bobby Drake has gone full Gandalf, sporting tattered robes and a cloak with the whole long gray hair and bushy ice beard. He now goes by Professor Drake, or even the name Ice Master. Ice Master traveled across realities to Earth 616 to warn Iceman about who to trust and about future decisions. He knew he was running out of time, but he got what he needed to be done. He disappeared into thin air pretty soon after the conversation was over, presumably going back to his reality, or maybe the conversation erased his reality entirely in a paradox kind of way. Maybe that's not how it works. Maybe it's Maybelline. We'll never know. Number 9, the movies. Yeah, I'm talking about the X-Men movies with Sean Shawn Ashmore as Bobby Drake. Unlike a lot of other realities, including the main 616 universe, this version of Bobby Drake was not the youngest founding member of the X-Men. Instead, Bobby is introduced as a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and also as the immediate love interest for Rogue, similar to the Ultimate Universe. He even made her an ice crystal shaped like a rose! So cute! He doesn't actually do a whole lot in the first movie though, other than being impersonated by Mystique to get Rogue to leave the school. In the second movie, he is definitely a bit more involved and he reveals his mutation to his parents, but again, he is kinda treated like a kid and a side character, and so is Rogue, and they don't really do much. In the third movie, by the final battle, Bobby is finally standing as an official X-Man. It's here that he comes face to face with his rival slash former best friend, Pyro, and completely overpowers him, headbutting the hotshot after taking on his ice form for the first time in those movies. It only took 3 movies, but he got there. And then, lastly, in Days of Future Past, which opens in a post-apocalyptic 2023, actually, I didn't know that, Bobby is one of the last surviving X-Men and Free Mutants, and he participates in the team's attempt to change the past, defending them alongside the other surviving X-Men. He dies twice in this movie, but thanks to time travel, he's all good, so let's hope we get to see him again, maybe in Deadpool 3. Number 8, King Ice. Yeah, you know we're talking about an amalgam comic yet again. When Doctor Strange Fate, aka a mix of Doctor Strange from Marvel and Dr. Fate from DC, attempted to merge the Prime Marvel universe and the DC universe to reform the Amalgam universe, he took both the X-Men and the Justice League of America and slapped them together with some sticky tack, chewing gum, and some duct tape. This created a whole slew of really awesome amalgamated characters, one of which would be King Ice, aka a blending of both Iceman and Aquaman. He and the others were used to confront Access and Doctor Strange, but were pretty much ineffective. Once Doctor Strange Fate was defeated and the Amalgam universe restored, the combined people were split, but I still can't help but think this makes a whole lot of sense with Iceman using the moisture around him to fuel his powers, and Aquaman, well, he's Aquaman. Number 7, 1602. In a dystopian and alternate future, the villain Purple Man used his powers to become president and take control of America. Trying to eliminate any opposition, he decided to send Captain America to the Elizabethan times instead of just, I don't know, putting him 6 feet under, I guess. Whatever the silly reason was, this had an unexpected effect. When Cap wound up in the 1600s, it created another divergent timeline, one in which present-day heroes already emerged in the 17th century, the year 1602 to be precise. Mutants in this timeline were referred to as witchbreed, and as such were feared and hunted by the Inquisition. Just as Iceman is a mainline original X-Man, he is also part of this alternate timeline's X-Men team as well. The counterpart of Iceman was called Roberto Trefusis, and despite his young age, he showed a great control over his power. Roberto managed to encase an entire sailing ship in a block of ice and was able to turn rain into an ice storm. Roberto also claimed to have served as cabin boy for the famous Sir Francis Drake, who happened to be his uncle. With the whole Drake last name, that kinda makes sense. Number 6, Age of Apocalypse. In the Age of Apocalypse reality, it was Magneto who originally founded and trained the X-Men, thanks to some tomfoolery by the Mutant Legion. Bobby Drake, being among the first mutants Magneto recruited, was pushed by the Master of Magnetism much harder than Xavier would have, making the youngest X-Man drop his joking, kid-like attitude and tap into his full potential. And he really did tap into it. Iceman in this universe was responsible for defeating Eunice, freezing him, then shattering the leader of Apocalypse's Infinites. And he played a big part facing Apocalypse's Horsemen. Later, Iceman revealed himself as Sinister Iceman, and united with Archangel, who had become the new Apocalypse. Bobby was as cold as ice in this universe, and that pun is intended. And he had no qualms about ending lives. As a villain, he began going around taking out X-Force members, like when he shattered Deadpool and was trying to delete Wolverine from life, but his actions were in vain because Warren Worthington, Archangel, regained his real personality. After that, Bobby, alongside Dark Beast and a few others from the Age of Apocalypse reality, traveled to Earth 616, where he specifically hid in Madripoor, enjoying his time away from his chaotic reality and hiding from his universe's Nightcrawler, who had joined up with X-Force and was hunting down the other traitors from his reality. It wasn't too long before Nightcrawler caught up with Bobby, and things got a little heated, shall we say. Number 5. Ultimate Iceman. In the Ultimate Marvel continuity, Bobby Drake is the youngest founding member of the X-Men, like he should be. He ran away from his family at the peak of government-supported Sentinel attacks, trying to save his family from their wrath. Now, Bobby was found by the X-Men on their very first mission, where he ends up being the one to save the day when he freezes a Sentinel, preventing it from falling on and taking out innocent bystanders. Bobby pretty quickly proved himself as a valuable asset, single-handedly taking out the Ultimates once with a gigantic ice wall and stopping an invasion by Colonel Wraith and Weapon X all by himself. He was only able to be stopped by Rogue, who was his on-again, off-again girlfriend and in temporary possession of Marvel Girl's telepathy at the time. Professor X has stated that Bobby is one of the 3 most powerful X-Men, which is pretty accurate in most realities. Number 4. Dark Iceman. Back in 2005, the Scarlet Witch's creation of the House of M enabled the Shadow King of Earth 616 to escape to an alternate reality, Earth 6141. The Shadow King here possessed that version of Professor X and then corrupted his team of original X-Men, creating Shadow X. He maintained constant telepathic contact and control over them and forced them to take the lives of all the heroes of their world. Professor X and Shadow X killed all the other paranormal beings in their native reality before coming to Earth 616 as a result of M-Day. The members of Shadow X, including Iceman, faced off against New Excalibur and were eventually defeated by them. Shadow X was then sent to prison, where they were contacted by members of Black Air, who arranged for their release, and they eventually met with the possible world conqueror Albion to join forces. Eventually, the members of Shadow X were released from their mind control with the passing of Professor X, and they defected away from Black Air and Albion and teamed up with New Excalibur. One by one, the members of Shadow X were unfortunately taken out by the Shadow Captains until only Bobby remained. With his friends gone, he used his mutant powers to their fullest until he finally had nothing left to give, and he passed away in battle. Number 3. Earth X. Like most of the other characters from the Earth X reality, a lot of Iceman's early history mirrors that of his Earth 616 counterpart up until the release of the Terrigen Mists on the world. All of humanity was mutated, and Bobby was among the many heroes trying to help people in a world gripped by chaos and anarchy. And one of the ways that he did this was by teaming up with former X-Men Angel and delivering groceries to those who were not powerful enough to safely leave their homes, which is actually quite sweet when you think about it. At some point in this timeline, Bobby lost the ability to transform back into his human form, as in, he was constantly in his ice form. So, to avoid melting, Iceman was forced to go north, where he, no joke, constructed a winter wonderland at the top of the world, where he came to reside alongside the nearby Inuit peoples. Fast forward quite a bit, and Galactus eventually destroys the celestial embryo that is growing in the Earth's core. This alters the planet's mass and pushed the planet out of its regular orbit. As you can imagine, the planet began to suffer catastrophic environmental changes. The temperature in New York dropped to freezing Arctic temperatures, and so Bobby could return to New York and be reunited with Angel. Yay! The two heroes would aid the law in protecting the Human Torch in New York, which would be under constant attack by followers of the Church of Immortus. Eventually, thanks to the Absorbing Man, the Earth returned to normal, and Iceman most likely went back up north, but he did show up for the wedding between Medusa and King Britain, and with his former X-Men, which is kinda nice. Number 2. House of M. In the timeline created by the Scarlet Witch, known as the House of M, Bobby definitely does things quite a bit differently. When his mutant powers first ever manifested, Bobby kept them a secret from everyone but his parents. Turns out that he should have kept it from them too. Bobby's own father turned him over to the authorities when the Human-Mutant War began because he thought he would be safer in custody than hunted as a renegade. I don't know about that one. Bitter over his betrayal, Bobby was more than happy to join up with none other than Apocalypse when the Ancient Mutant freed Bobby during a raid on the Alamo Mutant camp. After the war ended, with Magneto becoming the new ruler of the globe, the Master of Magnetism gave North Africa to Apocalypse, and Iceman continued to serve his savior loyally as one of his horsemen. We know that the horsemen always get some kind of upgrade to their powers. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about this, but we actually never learn how Iceman's powers were augmented, and that really annoys me. Either way, Iceman helped to secure the human population of the area, forcing them to rebuild Egyptian monuments. Eventually, Iceman was one of the mutants who volunteered to accompany Apocalypse when Magneto Magneto authorized the invasion of Wakanda. He distracted Sunfire, Storm, and Namor, freezing the latter two long enough to allow Apocalypse to get past them, but he took a brutal attack from Sunfire, and it's actually pretty unclear whether or not Sunfire completely destroyed him. We know that Iceman has been able to reform himself from being evaporated, so who can really say? Not me. Number 1. Draka, King of Ice. Iceman is an original X-Men, the youngest of them, but he isn't exactly the most popular of them, so unfortunately that means that while he does have lots of alternate selves, they don't always really get a lot of focus, and they're kinda just there in the background. But that doesn't mean they can't still be totally awesome, and that is definitely the case with Draka, King of Ice. In Extreme X-Men from 2012, an X-Men team made up of Dazzler, Emmeline Frost Summers, General James Howlett, Kurt Wagner, and a floating Charles Xavier head make their way to the alternate Earth 20329. Here, the Earth is ruled by Thor, God of Thunder, alongside and under the direction of 5 other mutant gods: Storm, Skybreaker, and Allmother, Warren, as in Worthington, the Herald, Sawtooth, Sabretooth, Lord of the Wild, Namor, God of the Sea, and finally, Draka, King of Ice. Draka, I'm assuming, is derived from Bobby Drake's last name, and now with such familiar names, you'd assume these gods would be friendly, but it turns out that they are being mind-controlled by their world's Charles Xavier, who is pretending to lead a resistance against them. As for Draka specifically, I believe he has 2 throwaway lines total, and is for the most part just silent and standing in the background looking totally awesome and godlike. And for that, he's making this list.
There are thousands of Magnetos across the multiverse. Some versions would shock even the biggest Magneto fan. There is a steampunk version of Magneto, and that is the coolest thing I have ever seen. He originates from Earth 20,329, or Steampunk Godworld. Love that name, we should make it into a theme park. Steampunk Godworld comes from Extreme X-Men Volume 2 and also the year 2012. This is the sort of world that could only come from the year of 2012. The world is ruled by mutant gods, and Charles Xavier is evil, and also his head is in a floating fishbowl. It's amazing. Magneto here goes by Magnus, and he has a mohawk? Kind of. It looks more like a Roman battle helmet. He looks great no matter what is on his head. He also wears a trench coat. Truly, this has gotta be like peak Magneto fashion here. Magnus seems to have the same powers as his 616 counterpart, but better style. I'm kidding, they're both beautiful in their own way. I'm not trying to start fights today. Him and Xavier created a world together that was a secret haven for science and tech and mutants, and all was well until it was discovered that Xavier was evil. Magneto had to end him for that one. Magsquito, the magnetic mosquito, is an actual character, if you can believe it. He originated in Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, and that makes this make more sense, I think. Magsquito is the main enemy to the X-Bugs. You can probably guess who the X-Bugs are in the 616 universe. The X-Bugs find out about Magsquito throwing a bunch of metal around because though he is a mosquito, he still has powerful magnetism abilities. The X-Bugs assume the worst and they go to stop Magsquito. The thing is, Magsquito wasn't actually doing anything wrong here. He actually decided to leave evil in the past and open a junkyard to sell scrap metal, so all that metal throwing was just him at work contributing to society. The X-Bugs literally show up and ruin his day, but at least they look remorseful when they discover that he wasn't doing anything wrong and he was just vibing at work. Magsquito does eventually return to evil though when he is recruited to join a villain squad. He ends up arrested by Sheep for that one. Sheep is S.H.I.E.L.D. in this universe, by the way. The Bee yonder ended up transporting a bunch of heroes and villains off Earth to make them do animal secret wars known as Secret Furs. That's kind of the last time we see him. At first his outfit was more magnet themed. He wore red and blue and had a magnet on his head, but the last time we see him he is wearing the red and purple we've come to associate with Magneto. Magneto and Rogue as a romance is something we've all seen. Some of us wish we hadn't, but it did happen. That's not the only time the two have been close. They were once absorbed into one person. In X-Men Millennial Visions 2 or on Earth 1033, Rogue-Magneto was born. So Magneto finds out he has a few months left to live and he throws a temper tantrum all over New York. He starts a war downtown. That's not really what happened. In reality, he realized that he only had a few months left to secure secure the place of mutants in society and was willing to get there before his death by any means necessary. In an effort to stop the event, Rogue and the X-Men tried to absorb Magneto's powers into her life force so she could attempt to use his powers to stop the fight. She did not account for the sheer amount of traumatic memories he holds in his head, and it was so much she literally got overwhelmed and shut down. Magneto had an opening to take over her body, he took it. So now Magneto is chillin' in the body of a former lover and is back terrorizing the Earth, but as a woman. As a woman who is a member of the X-Men, that causes pretty much all the problems one might expect. Rogue-Magneto broke into the High Evolutionaries base in the Savage Land to attempt to find a disease or a virus that would be strong enough to wipe out humans and leave mutants in charge of the world. He did find the disease and it did eliminate a bunch of people, unfortunately. However, it didn't work out completely in his favor, as mutants were soon locked up so humans could find a cure. Magneto was still running loose in the Savage Land, so the X-Men that weren't captured went to fight her. We don't know how it ended. The Millennial Visions were just imagined futures, stories that would likely never make it to the page, but were fun for writers to explore, so there are lots of examples of interesting versions of the heroes in there. I like to think though that Rogue-Magneto lost that final battle. The X-Sentinel Magneto is real and he will hurt you. I mean, I'm assuming most of us are human, so he'd probably want to hurt us anyway, but the Sentinel version of him is that times 10. This version is also from the X-Men Millennial Visions, but volume 1 this time. Earth 1011 is a world in which first, the X-Men seem to get along with Magneto, which is great. He is part of the team. The X-Men, though they are mutants, they can still get hurt most of the time. Injuries can be bounced back from, but as the X-Men get older, it's hard to heal and some injuries were too great. So to keep their bodies battle ready, if some part of them went down, it would be replaced with a cybernetic version. Eventually, their entire body was cybernetic and even their minds. The X-Men downloaded their consciousness into their bodies. This comic came out in 2000 and just 10 years later, humanity caught up. They actually did that with a real person, B-I-N-A if you are interested, but back to the mutants though. Their cybernetic bodies were designed to look like the suit of the mutants so that people would recognize them, knew they were on their side. The problem with these cybernetic brains is that they started to overflow with information and break down, leading to the team taking a page out of Magneto's book and existing with their one purpose they were built for, protecting mutant kind by any means necessary. And that meant terrorizing humans and hunting them down just to keep mutants safe. With all the demonic things Magneto has done in his life, it's only fair that he once had what looks like little devil horns on his helmet. Earth 928 exists in X-Men 2099, and it's responsible for maybe Devil Magneto? This Magneto is mentioned in a speech. The speech is about the rights of mutants and the rules of combat that go with it. This Magneto is assumed to have all the same powers of 616 Magneto plus what looks like 2 little horns. Magneto's helmet has taken on a lot of different shapes. Earth's 1191's Magneto helmet kind of looks like a scorpion? This world is thought to be more made up. It exists in the X-Men, The Times and Life of Lucas Bishop 3. Bishop is being told a story by his grandmother, so all the characters are drawn in the way a young Bishop might have imagined them. Toad is actually a toad, for example, and Magneto just looks weird. He still leads the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. In this imaginary Kid Bishop world, they were plotting to eliminate a mutant-fearing politician that wanted to, and did, pass anti-mutant laws. Him and the Brotherhood were of course stopped by the X-Men. It was a good thing because then humans started seeing that mutants weren't all evil. The main difference between this universe and 616 is that everyone looks different because they're being imagined by a child. Lots of the events and everything remain the same as they are simply stories being passed through the generations. The Magneto of Earth 1191 seems to have the same backstory and powers as the Magneto of 616. It is time to start monkeying around because Ape Magneto is on the scene. It's Earth 8101 and most of the heroes and villains here are apes. Ape Magneto has the same costume as 616 Magneto and it looks like the same powers. The biggest, possibly only difference between the two is that one is a few steps behind in its evolution. Ape Magneto really isn't in the comics a lot, but he is there just enough that you clock his presence. He was featured in a big battle where the Ape Avengers, Ape X-Men, and Ape Fantastic Four were all trying to defeat the Ape Beyonder. It appears that Ape Magneto and Magneto 616 share similar, if not the exact same power set. With all the antics Magneto gets up to, it's only a matter of time before he became a court jester. Magneto has done a lot of bad things, yet I almost feel bad for him in this situation. The Earth is 9997 from the Earth X comic. This Magneto shares a very similar past with 616 Magneto, but this Magneto has a very different future. The part of note that caught my eye, and is the reason that this Magneto made it on the list, is because Magneto became a jester. It happened during the Universe X moment. Galactus destroyed the celestial embryo that was growing inside the Earth. That, of course, messed the Earth up. Vibranium was shifting around and it made the Earth's poles shift. Somehow, because of the poles shifting, Magneto and Toad switch powers, so now Toad is one of the most powerful mutants ever, and Magneto is left to suffer to his every whim. Toad made Magneto his jester and treated him the way Magneto treated Toad, so Toad is coming from somewhere with his actions. Magneto's powers were eventually restored and he shockingly forgave Toad. This Magneto is stronger than 616's Magneto simply because he's older and has had more time to get stronger. Magneto was once Enrique. This was the Marvel 1602 story where time travel gone wrong caused our X-Men to exist in the 17th century instead of the 21st century. So everyone has new names, not just Magneto. How we get Enrique from Magneto, or even Max, unclear, but this is taking place during the Spanish Inquisition, so that probably has something to do with it. Magneto 616 is Jewish, but this Magneto was taken as a kid and baptized against his will into the Catholic Church and then kept there and raised there. In this world, mutants are called witch breeds, and so the usual elimination methods used during the Spanish Inquisition are used on the witch breeds. Every major thing that happens in the original plot happens here, just with a historical twist. 17th century Magneto became the Grand Inquisitor at his church, and he was responsible for targeting witch breeds, but if a witch breed blended in, he would kind of just turn the other cheek, like with his kids in this universe. Of course, Enrique does get found out for his witch breed status and then escapes to America. Enrique has all the same powers of 616 Magneto, but he also has a leg up on him. He has a sick beard. Marvel 1602 or Earth 311 is truly the gift that keeps on giving. I don't know what it is about modern heroes and old-timey outfits, but I love it and I want more. The Magneto of 8311 goes by Magneto and is also a horse. It's the Spider-Ham comics. It would be weirder if something normal happened. Magneto appears in the backup comic Iron Mouse in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham 3. Magneto was a half-hour late returning his tape to the video store. The comic was released in the 80s, so those still existed. But because he was late, he was charged a late fee of $5, which he was not happy about at all. In all fairness, that would be a $14.50 charge today. As revenge, Magneto uses his animal magnetism powers to erase the tapes in the store, effectively destroying the shop owner's business. Magneto almost got the Lawrence Elk tapes though, and that did not sit well with an old lady nearby, so she smacked him into a concussion with her umbrella. Magneto disappeared for over 3 decades, then reappeared in 2020 in Spider-Ham 3 in the background of one of the big battles.
Professor X has had a lot of adventures across the multiverse, although I will say his alternate versions tend to either meet a tragic fate in most realities or otherwise just see him turn evil. In this reality, Charles and Magneto are not the ones to become Onslaught, but instead Jean and Magneto are. Like many other versions of Chuck that exist across the multiverse, this one dies earlier on, which causes events in this reality to splinter off and change. In the fight against Magneto, Charles ends up dead, and it is when this happens that Jean's latent and supreme powerful psychic abilities spark. This happens of course because Charles was the one who had put up barriers in Jean's mind to protect her from this awesome power that she has. When he dies, the barriers basically go with him. Jean is the one who ends up shutting down Magneto's mind, and as a result the two psyches merge to create this universe, Earth 696's version of Onslaught. This version of Charles and Jean and Onslaught first appeared in Original X-Men issue number 1, which only came out last year in 2023. Who would you like to see combined together to give us an Onslaught, and what do you think would be different about that? A truly nasty version of Charles, this alternate version is known as Herr Xavier. In this reality, known as Earth 597, the Germans instead won World War II, which changes things quite a bit. The Professor X we see here becomes a villain who is responsible for taking out Angel and Beast. Instead of the X-Men, we have the Reichsmen, which is made up of some of our standard X-Men members that we're familiar with from Earth 616. And we also have their opposing team, Lightning Force, which is also made up of different characters who parallel the current members of the Excalibur team. This version of Charles first appeared in the Excalibur one-shot Excalibur Weird War 3. On Earth 12, all heroes, even mutant heroes, are basically treated like celebrities. Professor Professor X included. This version of Charles hails from the same reality as Calvin Rankin from the multiversal reality-hopping Exiles team. In fact, Charles was actually Calvin Rankin, aka Mimic's mentor on Earth 12, before he went off and was recruited to join the Exiles. In this reality, Calvin ended up going on to lead the X-Men thanks to Professor X's mentorship. When Blink heads to this reality to return Calvin's body after his death during his time serving on the Exiles team, this version of Professor X actually offers Blink a place with his own X-Men. Unfortunately, Blink was called to help save another reality, and so she could not accept Charles's offer. I love visiting the 1602 reality. Here, Professor X is known as Carlos Javier. He would end up running a school that sought to find and recruit witchbreed, which are like mutants kind of in the 1602 reality. The 1602 reality takes place in that very same year that it gets its name from, while also being known in terms of its designated reality number as Earth 311. This reality's creation resulted from Captain America being banished, sent through time by Purple Man to be lost so that he would become MIA, and to avoid the fallout from the hero's destruction, which would then of course have made Cap a martyr, a symbol for the people that Purple Man was oppressing to rally around. This was after Purple Man had basically come to rule the world, or a version of it anyways. As a result, the past was changed and Marvel's heroes started appearing sooner in comparison to when they showed up in the Earth 616 reality, in terms of our timelines. Kane, Marco, and Professor X end up becoming friends in this reality, often known as MC2. It's believed that they share the same origin as their Earth 616 counterparts, but instead Juggernaut ended up reforming later on in life. Actually kinda like what's been happening recently in the comics with Juggernaut. This version of Charles made his first appearance in a flashback in the Wild Thing series in issue number 5. Wild Thing is a series that follows the adventures of the daughters of Logan and Elektra. In the MC2 reality, aka Earth 982, you see we get to explore what the world could be like if superheroes were basically allowed to age, retire, and settle down. This is also where Spider-Girl comes from. This one is pretty great, but also pretty goofy in some respects. In this world and what if story, we answer the question, what if Professor X had become the Juggernaut? In case you were wondering, we would get an extremely beefy version of Charles here. Honestly, I do think this story is pretty interesting too. When Kane was about to touch the gem of Sidorak, instead, Charles pushes him out of the way and he accidentally comes into contact with it. This grants him the powers of the Juggernaut, but also, like Kane, he gets trapped in the cave following the cave-in that ensues. When he finally emerges as the Juggernaut, he'll face off against Magneto, who is threatening the United Nations, and he'll ultimately beat him and then convince Magneto's team, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, to become the X-Men and work with and for Charles. With this X-Men team, Juggernaut would in essence conquer the world, protecting mutants but, not really caring so much about the fate of humans. Eventually, the X-Men and Magneto work together to overthrow Charles and send him hurtling through space. This all goes down in the second series of What If in issue number 13 if you wanted to check it out. This version of Charles, also known as MODOK, hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality, or AOA. AOA, aka Earth 295, was created as a result of Charles Xavier's death happening. This happening early also puts events in motion that basically allow Apocalypse to seize power, with him going on to rule the world, hence why we call it Age of Apocalypse. So if Charles is dead here, how does he become MODOK? Well, this specific version of Chuck is not actually the original version, but is instead a clone, or at least a clone of Xavier's brain, who apparently has no will of his own, and just, he's MODOK. It looks great. Looks like MODOK to me. This version of Professor X hails from the alternate reality of Earth 804, as glimpsed briefly in What If issue number 20 from the first What If comic series. Here we see the answer to the question, what if the Avengers had fought the Kree-Skrull War without Rick Jones? Unlike many other realities, Charles actually doesn't die here, but Rick Jones does. Charles also doesn't even become evil here, how cool. And the events here actually force Charles to take a more prominent role in this story, where he ends up as a leader for Earth and all of its heroes in their fight against the Kree, who are basically attempting to conquer the planet. This version of Charles Xavier hails from the Mutant X reality. Havoc gets transported to this reality after he seemingly dies in the comics. Instead though, his psyche was basically thrown through the multiverse and into the body of another Havoc in another another reality. This Havoc had seemingly just died when the Earth 616 version of the character entered his mind and his body, allowing him to live on. Earth 616 Havoc would go on to live basically a whole life in the Mutant X reality, meeting tons of alternate versions of the 616 characters, including Madeline Pryor, who would become his wife, and whom he would also have a son with. What is it with Havoc and having children that exist solely in alternate realities? That is a weird thing that Havoc has. He gets to know them and then he's like, anyways, back to 616. Here, Havoc was the sole Summers brother who lived as well. Professor X was one of the characters from this reality, and obviously we're going to talk about him. Xavier becomes a villain in the Mutant X reality known as Earth 1298 after being corrupted by the Shadow King. Yeah, this version of Charles is one of the evil ones. He goes on to team up with Sinister at one point in a plot to take the power of all of Earth's telepaths for himself. Pretty evil. This plot ends up actually being so evil, so dastardly, so deadly, that Sinister even turns on Xavier, attempting to stop him. You know your plot is evil when Mr. Sinister's like, you know what, actually, I think I'm gonna stop you there. This is just a fun little goofy one, and I feel like a really fun way to end this video. In this universe, the X-Men are instead known as the Rex-Men. Here, they're all doggos. This appearance of Charles comes from one of the little short stories seen in Millennial Visions. Always a fun and bizarre, just comic collection of stories to revisit. This story was titled Universe Rex. Here, Professor Rex's Rex Dogs team includes dog versions of Colossus, Bishop, Storm, Gambit, Wolverine, and Banshee. Number 10. Howlett. Howlett is another one of my favorite Wolverine alternates. He hails from Earth 12025, known for being his own home universe. That's how popular he is. That's how we know what that universe is, just based on this one character. He was created by Greg Pak and Mike McCone, and made his first appearance in 2004's Astonishing X-Men in issue number 44. In this reality, James Howlett becomes the Governor General of Canada, serving both the Queen of England and Canada. He often teams up with the Hercules of this reality, and the two even have a romantic relationship together. Tragically, their romance initially had to be kept a secret because both of the people they served, the Queen and Zeus in Hercules' case, banned them from being in a relationship together, each for their own different reasons, and even when they did reveal their love, there was hell to pay.
In at 9, old man Logan. 50 years later, Logan lives with his wife Maureen, his son Scotty, and his daughter Jade on a plot of land in Sacramento of what used to be California, but is now a part of Hulkland, and no, that's not an amusement park. He requires money to pay his rent to his landlords for his territory, his landlords being the descendants of Bruce Banner, you know, the Hulk gang, who are the product of just a messed up procreation situation. I don't think I can say the actual words on YouTube, but you get what I'm saying. He refuses to sell his children's toys to pay for rent, so Logan is shown as just, you know, a broken man who refuses to fight, even though, you know, he definitely could. He's living peacefully, but then when he realizes he's unable to pay, that's when the Hulk gang will not accept a plea deal to pay double next month. So yeah, considering how they're inappropriately and without permissionly conceived children of Hulk and She-Hulk, which is Bruce's cousin, you know that this isn't going to go well. They confront him on his lack of payment, violently beat him, and then just, oh god, it's such a messed up story. Logan entertains visions of gutting the eldest Hulk brother Otis as he takes the beating, but yeah, the Hulk gang later kills his family, so Logan kills all the Hulk gang. It's a messed up version, but pretty iconic, but still, yikes. What the hell, Marvel? God, don't put this in the MCU. Thank God this wasn't a what if episode. Jeez.
Number 8. 1602. King James is the alternate version of Wolverine that exists in the 1602 reality, or rather the 1602 reality as it exists in God Emperor Doom's Battle World, which appeared during the 2015 Secret Wars event. This version of Wolverine also has claws like his comic book counterpart, but is a villain instead of a hero. He is one of the witch breed that Sarah and Angela hunt down, with Charles Javier taking over for James after he is defeated.
In at 7, Ultimate Wolverine. In this reality, Wolverine suffers from amnesia, and as a result, there's little known about his early life, but what is known is both suspect and unverifiable. It is believed that at one point, Wolverine had a wife and child, but they were supposedly killed by Sabretooth. As both Wolverine and Sabretooth's memories have been tampered with in this past timeline, this claim is suspect. However, if both of their memories were altered, maybe it does have some validity. Wolverine did own a wedding ring that serves as his only link to his past, not the game. That's a whole other thing, that's a different channel. But this version of Wolverine has the healing factor, disease resistance, toxin resistance that, damn, I wish I had 2 years ago. Extended longevity, superhuman senses, stamina. The ladies love him because of that too. He has that agility, the reflexes, the classic adamantium laced skeleton, and retractable claws. He's experienced in hand-to-hand combat. He's an expert assassin. He can lift 800 pounds. Like, bro, come on, can you even lift? Spider-Man lifts twice that when he's taking it easy, okay? And that's not even in the symbiote suit, which I guess technically doesn't count and doesn't exactly exist. But you know what, let's ignore that. He's still cool.
Number 6, The Punisher. In the What If Wolverine one-shot issue number 1 from 2005, here we get to imagine what the world might have been like had Wolverine become Punisher instead of Frank Castle. The story is set a bit in the past and imagines what it would be like if Logan had lost his family and sought revenge. In this version of the tale, Wolverine goes up against Scarface, who has Logan's family killed. His wife in this universe is Silver Fox, and together the two had a son. Scarface also might be a character that you'll actually recognize from the main Marvel universe here. He's an alternate version of Logan's half-brother Dog, who you may know from the Wolverine origin story and comic series.
Halfway through into number 5, Wild Thing. On Earth 982, Rena was the new girl at a high school where some of the more popular girls tried to make her life miserable because, you know, it's high school. Stating that she was the daughter of an immigrant and an unemployed biker, but her father is Logan. You know, Wolverine. So he picked her up from school on his bike, and opinions changed about her. Because, you know, yeah. Especially when they learned that her mother, Elektra, was a wealthy martial arts expert. Gotta love high school. However, life at high school wasn't just about dealing with the crowd, because as Wild Thing, Rena had to save a classmate from a high-speed kidnapper, defeat a computerized assassin, stop a demonic invader, and even fight one of her teachers when he was turned into a prime sentinel. Yeah, jeez. That's just high school. Another Sky High reference for those that are keeping track. Rena first appeared in J2 number 5 in 1998 and was created by Ron Lim and Tom DeFalco, even if technically she was created by Logan and Elektra, if you get the joke.
Number 4, Albert. I love Albert. He is the android alternate of Wolverine who was designed by Donald Pierce. Remember him? I remember him. Pierce created Albert along with LCD as part of a plan to trap Wolverine and have him destroyed. Fortunately for Wolverine, LCD was given the wrong level of sort of a logic machine in her mind and managed to find a way around her and Albert being used as such, ultimately freeing Albert and LCD in the end of their obligation to kill Logan. Albert was given his name by LCD after Albert Einstein, who she compared his intelligence to after she severely upgraded him all by herself.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Wolverine pool. Wade Wilson from Earth TRN 1946 was bonded with adamantium through his skeleton by the Weapons Plus program. He was later recruited by Deadpool or Dreadpool for his army, and he killed Deadpool Pulp before the arrival of Galactipool. I wish that this was a joke. He was attacked by Deadpool with a grenade from which bugs and other it ate all of his flesh, leaving behind only his skeleton and his claws, which was seemingly the same as Earth 616's Wolverine's skeleton and claws, but like it's a Deadpool. It's Deadpool in Wolverine's body. That also has the same scarring that regular Deadpool has. Wolverine Pool's healing factor is most likely weaker than 616 Wolverine or Deadpool's healing factor, which makes him less dangerous, but come on, okay? A combination of Wolverine and Deadpool is something that we should all fear, and most likely do, but I'm surprised Deadpool didn't make this a thing at the end of Deadpool 2 when he was correcting everything that he had done wrong. He should have done this, that would have been funny.
Number 2, Talon. Laura Kinney is obviously one of my favorite versions of the Wolverine character, and she herself has also technically been Wolverine. Initially known as X-23, Laura was actually created to be a clone of Logan. Her mother, Sarah Kinney, initially tried to create a clone of Logan, but was unsuccessful due to the Y chromosome being damaged. Instead, she attempted to compensate for this by using some of her own genetic material to supplement the parts of the genetic sequence that were basically damaged and missing, creating a female clone instead. It worked, but her work was damaged by her rival, Dr. Xander Rice, forcing Sarah to become a surrogate for the clone if she wanted to save her work. Sarah did just that, and X-23 was born. For years, X-23 was raised to be only a weapon, but eventually, after the members of the program turned on each other, she was able to secure her freedom. Unfortunately, along with her freedom came loss. Loss of her purpose in the world, and loss of the few people involved in the program who had genuinely cared for her, including her mother, Sarah, who named Laura with her last dying breath. Later, Laura would go on to track down Wolverine and attempt to kill him, seeing herself and her genetic father as nothing more than deadly and dangerous weapons. However, through meeting Logan, X-23 also found a sense of family, and eventually would even come to join the X-Men team. And I mean, spoiler alert, she doesn't end up killing Wolverine, in case you didn't know. Currently, she goes by the codename of Talon.
And finally, in at number 1, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is obviously a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. I'm sorry, dude, Alberta sucks. His uncle was a member of the RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for those of you who use the Imperial system, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force. I don't know if they have an acronym, but it just felt right. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, which was a Canadian super soldier program, and then from there it's kind of the same thing. His bones were bonded to adamantium, and he discovered that he was a meta-mutant, which is just the meta-mutants in this dimension, but yeah, it's Batman and Wolverine, okay? He has all the powers of Logan and a clawcopter and clawmobile. That's awesome. I want this in the MCU. If they're fixing the DCEU so that we can do this, that would be great.
Number 10, Zombie Dark Phoenix. This version of Jean does have some perks when it comes to power set, but ultimately her downfall is, well, being stuck in the Marvel Zombies universe, where many zombies get taken out by fellow zombie hero Hulk. Here, however, Jean is supposed to possess the Phoenix Force still, which in theory I think should have allowed her to resurrect herself, but maybe that works differently when you get completely punched to smithereens by the Hulk. But I mean literally, she gets punched through the torso, and then the Hulk crushes her head with his fist in Marvel Zombies 2 issue 5. It's quite gratuitous because, well, Marvel Zombies. Still, however, in theory, the zombified version of Jean should have been considered one of the most powerful. And overall, for the zombie heroes, even being defeated by the Hulk, she was considered one of the most powerful, running with the zombie Galacti, aka Power Cosmic Zombies, on Earth 2149 or Earth Z prior to her death. Number 9, Ultimate Jean Grey. Ultimate Jean Grey ended up becoming the leader of Tian, which I think gives her a power boost, but on the other hand, she was not made as powerful as her 616 counterpart when it comes to her abilities, so for that, she gets moved down a peg. While telekinesis was initially Jean's main power set on Earth 616, here in the Ultimate Universe, Jean seemed to primarily be more of a telepath, who also has telekinetic abilities. Jean, as a telepath, can psychically cloak herself or others, but not against stronger telepaths. She can heal trauma or give you trauma by altering your memories. She can give others amnesia too, and use her telepathy to create vivid and realistic illusions. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists about Jean Grey, or just more mutant lists in general, because I love doing those, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up, and maybe share it. Maybe give it to a friend you think, needs a little Jean Grey in their day. Number 8, Jean Grey, Earth 18119. Earth 18119 is the reality of Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. It was destroyed and then incorporated into Doctor Doom's Battle World, and after the destruction of Battle World, was then completely recreated and incorporated into the multiverse by Mr. Fantastic. On this Earth, Jean's power levels are comparable to her main continuity counterpart, but she also has the added strength of being a mother, which probably makes her both a more determined hero and teacher in this reality. On Earth 18119, Jean ended up breaking up with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, after he lost faith in Professor X's vision, and instead ended up dating and later marrying Wolverine. Together they have a daughter named Kate, whose codename is Shine, and she's super cute. Number 7, Madeline Pryor. A lot of people think of Maddie as being a weaker version of Jean because she's a clone, but I would argue Maddie is either on the same level of Jean, or at least has the potential to be at Jean's level or even more powerful. Why? Well, Madeline Pryor might be a clone, but Mr. Sinister also made her using a part of the Phoenix Force, which means that Madeline Pryor is kind of both Jean and the Phoenix Force all in one. She has like built-in Phoenix, which you'd think would make her connection just a touch stronger. Madeline, also known as the Goblin Queen, is also well versed in magic, something Jean hasn't really dipped into herself. I'm not saying she's more powerful than Jean Grey every day of the week, I'm just saying the potential for her to be more powerful here and there definitely exists, at least in my opinion. Number 6. Black Queen. This alternate version of Jean Grey comes to us from Earth 39529, which we get to peer into through 1989's What If series in issue 59. This What If asks the question, what if Wolverine led Alpha Flight? The answer? Well, the fate of Jean Grey would end up really dark. Wolverine becomes the leader of the Alpha Flight team due to the fact that the X-Men were unable to rescue him as their rescue team was killed by the Canadian military. Alpha Flight are the ones sent to rescue Jean after she ends up brainwashed by the Hellfire Club and joins them. Unfortunately, upon arrival, Wolverine learns it is too late as this version of Jean has already gone full Dark Phoenix. Logan has no other choice in this reality but to kill her in order to protect everyone else, basically on planet Earth. I don't know about you, but a completely evil Jean Grey who has gone full Dark Phoenix seems pretty powerful to me. I think Logan got lucky by even being able to kill her. Number 5. Jean Grey Earth 7642. This alternate version of Jean comes to us from a Marvel and DC crossover universe assigned the number Earth 7642. In fact, after her initial appearance, Jean from this universe would also appear in stories pertaining to her past in a crossover with the Wildcats, who were over at Image at the time. So just all the crossovers really. In this reality, Jean does become the Dark Phoenix, wipes out a star, and then takes her own life, much like in the main continuity version of the story. But instead of that not being the real Jean and learning that she was actually alive but hidden underwater, in this universe, Jean is resurrected by Darkseid, who intends to use her in his pursuit of the anti-life equation. The Teen Titans and the X-Men team up to defeat Darkseid and Jean, who then recovers her memory of her life before she was Dark Phoenix and turns on Darkseid, once more sacrificing herself to save everyone else. Ain't that just the way? Number 4. Apocalypse. In Age of Apocalypse in the reality of Earth 295, Jean ends up eventually taking on the mantle of Apocalypse. While she perished in this reality shortly after that happened, it's basically because she sacrificed herself in order to protect other people. As I said, that always happens. Jean Grey was so powerful as Apocalypse that she even managed to hold on to her own personality, but she could feel that influence of her new role working to change her, as she expressed that she did feel intensely arrogant, which might also be why she was cool going out the way that she did in the end. Cause you know, I feel like Jean wouldn't want to be fully taken over by that force. Number 3. God Level Phoenix. This version of Jean comes to us from one of the short stories featured in X-Men Millennial Visions 2000. In the story by the maker, we learn that Jean is one of the few to survive both Deathbird and Magneto's attack. Unable to stand against them as they are, the X-Men turn to a device Forge created to evolve them further, giving them basically godlike abilities, or raising their abilities to become godlike, perhaps I should say. Jean, as her power-up, gains full and complete control over the Phoenix, making her more powerful than ever before. Definitely not a hero you'd want to go up against, though I honestly wouldn't want to go up against Rogue either in this reality, who you just need to be within a mile of to have your powers and life energy drained, which sounds pretty scary, at least if she has any skin exposed. Number 2. Zorn. While she might not have gone dark or taken the powers of Apocalypse, Jean as Zorn from the alternate reality of Earth 13729 is just all around one of the most powerful Jeans in the multiverse, in my humble opinion. Her powers are like her main counterpart but improved, making her one of the strongest all-around alternates out there. Of course, even then, like most alternate versions of Jean, and even main Jean, Zorn still perished in the end. In X-Men Battle of the Atom issue number 2, we learn that Jean's powers are so great that not even she can apparently handle them, and during the all-out brawl with all the other X-Men and alternate X-Men, she overloads and ends up exploding, creating a massive explosion all around her and leaving nothing left of her own corpse except for her Zorn mask. Number 1. Phoenix/Dark Phoenix. I really wanted to make Zorn my number 1 most powerful alternate Jean, but then I remembered that technically both Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix personas we saw in the comics were not really Jean in the main continuity, which would make Phoenix an alternate as well, albeit a one who we thought at the time was the main Jean and who existed in the main continuity still, living in effect as Jean. Dark Phoenix was powerful enough to destroy a whole planet and the whole Dabari race, which I believe amounted to, I think, billions of lives lost. Later, after sacrificing herself to save everyone from her own darkness, it was revealed that Dark Phoenix wasn't really Jean, but in fact a Jean duplicate created by the Phoenix Force, which used Jean's body body and mind as blueprints to create a more powerful version of her while she rested safely beneath Jamaica Bay. So Phoenix and Dark Phoenix both are Jean, but at the same time aren't, which would classify Phoenix as an alternate version technically, and definitely one of the most powerful alternates out there as such. In fact, the creation of that retcon is pretty cool because apparently that retcon had to be created because they wanted to, if they were gonna bring Jean back, make her not guilty for any of the bad stuff she did as Dark Phoenix. So they basically had to make it so that that Jean wasn't the real Jean, which is pretty wild.